And at mypillow.com.
You're listening to Get Down to Business. I'm your host, Shalom Klein. I always love these intros to the show. It's always fun. So thrilled to have my good friend, Scott Gendell, who's the founder, president, and CEO of Terico Real Estate Development. Scott, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Shalom. Always a pleasure to speak to you, and I truly admire your work in the community.
Thank you very much. So, Scott, you, I guess like I am, we are both men of many hats. So aside for your great real estate work, and we certainly can talk about that, you've got a lot of organizations that you are passionate about. So, Scott, tell us about your community work.
So in addition to my real estate development work, I'm also involved as a board member of the Illinois Holocaust Museum. I've written a play called The Last Sabbath that was performed at the museum last year that really played on my interviews that I did for Steven Spielberg's Survivors of the Shoah Foundation. Those interviews were done between 1995 and 2007. I interviewed liberators and survivors. We took that message and created a composite character in The Last Sabbath that really was somebody who survived the Holocaust. She was her only family member to survive. She was heiress to a large department store in Berlin, liberated by a Polish Jew, and settled in Skokie, and events of the past met with the events of 1977 and 1978 when the worlds collided and the neo-Nazis tried to march in Skokie. We told it in flashback and in the present day to 1977-78. And that was really a culmination of my work doing show interviews for Spielberg's Foundation. We don't know if we're going to do a full production of it now, but that's where we're pointing. And then lastly, I'm chairman of JNF Chicago, and Jewish National Fund is near and dear to my heart. I'm a national vice president as well, and I'm chairing the national conference, which is held in Chicago once every 10 years. And this year will be held October 23rd through the 26th at the Fairmont Hotel in Chicago.
So, Scott, for our listeners that aren't familiar with the work of JNF, the Jewish National Fund, tell us a little bit about the impact that you're having abroad, but also the local Chicago chapter as well.
Fantastic. So, one, Herzl created Jewish National Fund, Karen Kayemet LeIsrael, the Eternal Fund, in 1901. He understood that in order to have a modern state in Israel, you had to connect it to the diaspora, and you had to buy and work the land and bring in immigration from the diaspora. So we've been in existence for 114 years. We're Herzl's original creation, and what we've done is not only planted 250 million trees, built 300 reservoirs in Israel, we do all the infrastructure, we care for the national parks, we do all the things that are the foundation of the modern state. In Chicago, we're raising money. We're very active in terms of outreach, and we have a true Zionist organization in Chicago. There are perhaps 35 board members, 7 of whom have soldiers in the IDF. It's a committed Zionist organization. We're doing the work that Israel, because of their security demands, is unable to do for themselves.
So, Scott,
we in the diaspora are doing our part.
Many of our listeners have probably seen one of the famous JNF charity cans and have probably heard of the work of planting trees, but you guys are doing so much more than that.
So much more, by the way. And the ubiquitous pushka, or the JNF blue box, was in every home, synagogue, deli, anywhere you found Jews in the diaspora, you found the pushki or the blue box. So what we do is really, we are the foundation. We are the infrastructure of the state. And for many people, all we've been to them is the tree people, but we're so much more than that.
So much more, and Chicago is going to play host to the national conference, which is really exciting at the Fairmont Chicago. So, Scott, you are a advocate for the Holocaust Museum, an advocate for, of course, survivors, but as well as JNF. If you don't mind, tell us a little bit about the work of Terico and your day job.
Well, my day job, and I always said if I could just clone myself a couple times, I'd be much better off. And I'm sure you feel the same way.
I do.
So my day job is I've built approximately 250 commercial buildings as a developer. My wife Lisa and I started Terrico, believe it or not, in December of 1985. It'll be 30 years.
Wow.
And we've done extensive development on the North Shore, and we've also developed in 9 different states. So we've branched out. Our reach is far and wide. Some of the local projects that people are familiar with are the Portillo's development on Skokie Boulevard. We did the new Walgreens at Old Orchard Road in Crawford, the Trader Joe's in Evanston. So some of your North Shore listeners often shop at Terrico Developments that we've been engaged in over the last 30-odd years.
And Scott, like me, you're an advocate and a fan of Skokie, aren't you?
Skokie is near and dear to me. You can take the boy out of Skokie, but you can never take Skokie out of the boy. And the truth of the matter is my friends and I, we were all raised in Skokie. 10 of us grew up here in the Devonshire area. We all went on to University of Illinois, and we all have stayed together, stood up at each other's weddings. It was very fertile ground for kids who wanted to succeed and kids who wanted to give back to their community.
Well, as I said, a man of many hats. Scott Gendell of Terrico Real Estate, the chair of JNF Chicago. Scott, we've got less than 30 seconds. How can people get a hold of you?
Okay, so one, you can reach me at shg@terricorealestate.com, my email. But more importantly, I'd like to see people get involved in the national conference, October 23rd to 26th. Go to jnf.org to register. We're bringing 300 college leaders in from across the country.
jnf.org, and reach out to Scott Gendell. We'll share your contact information. After the break, we've got some more tips, advice, and information for you. You're listening to Get Down to Business.